The vast expanse of space was eerily silent, interrupted only by the steady hum of the Galactic Empire's flagship, the Imperium. At the helm of this mighty vessel, Commander Aldrich stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze focused on the distant stars. A moment of peace before the next conquest, he thought. But peace was fleeting in the universe, especially when one held the power of the Empire in their grasp. "Commander," came the voice of Ensign Delara, a young officer who had been monitoring the communications array. Her voice trembled with a mix of curiosity and uncertainty. "We've intercepted a signal from Earth." Aldrich's brow furrowed. Earth. It had been years since the Empire had even considered the small, insignificant planet. It was a primitive world, still stuck in the clutches of the past, as far as the Empire was concerned. A simple, forgotten relic of the galaxy. So why, after so long, was the Empire receiving a signal from that world? "Is it an anomaly?" Aldrich asked, his voice betraying little emotion. He didn't want to be distracted by a meaningless blip. I thought so at first," Delara replied. "But it's not. It's active, and growing stronger." Aldrich's expression remained neutral, but a flicker of interest passed through his eyes. The Empire had dealt with signals from ancient civilizations before, most of which were nothing more than relics from forgotten races long gone. But this was different. "Analyze it. I want to know what we're dealing with." His voice was sharp now, no longer dismissing the oddity as a trivial matter. The crew of the Imperium scrambled to trace the signal's origins. After several tense moments, Delara's voice broke the silence again. "Commander, we've pinpointed it. It's coming from Earth, from beneath the surface." Beneath the surface. Aldrich frowned. Earth had been a low-priority world for centuries, a place of little consequence to the Empire. Yet here it was, calling out across the vast reaches of space, its signal intensifying with every passing moment. The commander's curiosity grew, but so did his skepticism. The signal could be anything: an old distress call, a forgotten signal from a lost fleet, or perhaps just a quirk of a dying civilization. But there was something about the frequency, something that felt alive. It wasn't the usual static or decay of ancient messages. What could it be? Aldrich muttered to himself, as if the very question held the key to a puzzle. "Should we send a reconnaissance team?" Delara asked, her voice quiet with the weight of anticipation. Aldrich hesitated. Sending a team to Earth would be risky. The planet might be hiding something dangerous, or it might simply be a waste of time. But the intensity of the signal was undeniable, and as a commander of the Empire, Aldrich knew better than to ignore such things. There was always the possibility that this signal, this mysterious message, was connected to something much greater. "Prepare the fleet," he commanded. "We're going to Earth. I want every ship on high alert. This signal might be nothing, but if it's something, we need to be ready." As the Imperium began its course toward Earth, the atmosphere aboard the flagship shifted. Officers whispered among themselves, trying to unravel the mystery of the signal. Was it a warning, a trap, or something far more dangerous, hidden beneath the surface of the seemingly insignificant planet? The vastness of space, once so reassuring, now seemed like a graveyard of secrets waiting to be uncovered. As the Imperial fleet neared Earth, the planet itself seemed to shudder, as if reacting to the presence of the mighty ships in its orbit. The darkness of space gave way to the brilliant blue glow of Earth's atmosphere, but something beneath the surface was changing. A faint pulse of energy began emanating from the depths of the planet, a signal that was no longer just a whisper but a powerful call, resonating across the universe. The commanders aboard the Imperial ships felt it, a surge of energy unlike anything they had ever encountered. It felt ancient, almost primal. In the heart of the Imperium, Aldrich stood on the bridge, staring at the planet below. His mind raced with possibilities. What could Earth be hiding? Could this signal be a relic from an ancient human civilization, or was it something far older, far more dangerous? "Commander," Dilara spoke again, her voice tense. There's something strange happening beneath the surface. It's like a shift in the planet's energy field. Aldrich's gaze turned to her, his expression hardened. What kind of shift? Not sure yet, but it's getting stronger. It's as if something is waking up, something from a long time ago. The tension aboard the flagship reached its peak as the Imperium drew closer to Earth. The massive warship loomed over the planet, its shadow stretching across the vast expanse of space. For a moment, it seemed as though Earth itself was holding its breath, waiting for the arrival of the Empire's most powerful fleet. The blue glow beneath the surface of the planet flickered, pulsing like a heartbeat. And then, without warning, the glow intensified, growing brighter and more violent, as though the planet itself was waking up after centuries of slumber. On Earth's surface, deep beneath the oceans and buried beneath mountains, a colossal force was stirring. The ancient Dreadnought fleet, long forgotten and hidden away by humanity's ancestors, was coming to life. The Imperial fleet, having underestimated Earth for so long, was about to learn the terrifying truth. The planet they considered weak, primitive, and insignificant was hiding a power that could shake the very foundations of the galaxy. The tension aboard the flagship was palpable. Aldrich, standing tall, gazed out into the expanse of space. The fleet had arrived at the threshold of a new war, one that had been waiting for centuries to begin. The signal had been a warning. And now, the time had come to face the consequences. The Imperium descended toward the blue planet, unaware of the ancient force that was now rising to meet them. As Earth's ancient fleet stirred to life, the galaxy would never be the same again. The command center of Earth's newly formed fleet was a world apart from the sleek, high-tech bridge of the Imperial Imperium. Commander Rook stood at the helm of a far more modest yet equally commanding operation. The room was lit by a soft blue glow from the advanced screens, their interface ancient yet still functional. The deep hum of machinery echoed around him as Dr. Elena Reyes, Earth's chief scientist, activated the ancient systems that would awaken the planet's greatest weapon. Are we ready? Rook's voice was steady, but there was an underlying tension in his tone. This was the moment humanity had prepared for, but it was also a moment of uncertainty. The old dreadnoughts, buried deep within the earth, beneath oceans and mountains, were humanity's final hope. But would they work? Would the power within these ships, so long dormant, still be alive? Elena glanced at the control panel, her fingers dancing across it with practiced precision. Everything's in place, Commander. The activation sequence is beginning. As she spoke, Rook's mind wandered back to his childhood, to the stories his grandfather used to tell him. Tales of a time when humanity was not yet united, when Earth was a vulnerable target for any intergalactic empire that wanted to conquer it. His grandfather had told him about these ancient warships, great dreadnoughts that were built to protect Earth from invaders. Ships made from technology so advanced that no other civilization in the galaxy even knew of it. They had been hidden away, locked beneath the planet's surface, waiting for the day when Earth would need them the most. The hum of machinery grew louder, and the air seemed to thicken with anticipation. The activation sequence was working. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the Earth began to tremble. A deep rumble echoed through the command center, and Rook could feel the floor vibrating beneath his boots. He exchanged a glance with Elena, who nodded grimly. The first dreadnought was coming to life. Outside, on the surface of Earth, the immense bunker doors, hidden beneath the ocean and buried deep in the mountains, began to open. The ground shifted as massive structures, once thought to be mere rocks or part of the landscape, slowly began to rise. The first dreadnought emerged from the depths of the ocean, its colossal frame rising with the groaning sounds of metal shifting after centuries of slumber. It was unlike anything the Galactic Empire had ever seen. A sleek, angular behemoth, its hull covered in strange, reflective patterns that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly glow. It moved slowly at first, the power of its engines building as it prepared for flight. Rook watched the display, his breath catching in his throat. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for. The fleet that had been built to defend the planet from invaders was finally awake, ready to rise from its long, hidden slumber. Energy shields are online. Elena's voice broke through his thoughts. Cloaking device activated. The Dreadnought is ready for action. The first ship, now cloaked from sight, was a ghost in the sky, invisible to the naked eye. And then, as if on cue, the distant hum of the ship's energy core pulsed, and a beam of concentrated energy shot out from the ship. The powerful beam sliced through space, targeting a lone Imperial scout ship that had been sent to observe Earth. The scout, unsuspecting of the hidden fleet, was in its path, and it was no match for the power of the Dreadnought. The energy beam struck the scout ship with a force that sent it spiraling into a fiery explosion, a bright flash that lit up the sky. The shockwave of the blast could be felt even on the surface of Earth, rattling buildings and sending ripples through the ocean. The Imperial scout ship was obliterated in seconds, disintegrating under the might of Earth's ancient weapon. Rook stood motionless, his heart pounding in his chest. The sight of the first strike was awe-inspiring. To witness such raw, devastating power, a weapon from Earth's forgotten past, was both exhilarating and terrifying. The destruction had been so swift, so final. But Rook couldn't shake the feeling that they had just awakened something that was not entirely under their control. As the dreadnoughts continued to rise, one by one, from their hidden bunkers, Rook felt a rush of conflicting emotions. On the one hand, the fleet was Earth's greatest defense, its only hope against the galactic superpowers that threatened to crush them. But on the other hand, he couldn't ignore the weight of history. These ships, once the last line of defense against invaders, had been created in a time when humanity faced enemies far more ruthless than the Galactic Empire. Were they truly ready to wield this power? Was humanity prepared to confront the forces it had long kept at bay? Elena's voice brought him back to the present. "We've completed the activation sequence, Commander. The rest of the fleet is operational. The dreadnoughts are all coming online." Rook nodded, his expression steely. "Ready them for battle. Earth is not just fighting for its survival anymore. We're fighting for our place in the galaxy." In the skies above, Earth's fleet had begun to assemble. The massive dreadnoughts, cloaked and ready, hovered above the surface, waiting for the signal to move into battle formation. The sight of them was enough to instill both awe and fear in anyone who saw them. But to those who had lived through the history of Earth's wars, they were symbols of strength and resilience. As Rook stood in the command center, the memories of his grandfather's stories echoed in his mind. The tales of humanity's ancestors, of how they had built these ships to ensure that Earth would never fall to invaders. And now, those stories were coming to life. But the weight of the moment wasn't lost on him. The fleet's power, once a secret, had now been unleashed, and with it, the fate of the galaxy was about to change. But even as Earth's fleet stood ready, something darker stirred in the depths of space. The Galactic Empire, having lost contact with their scout ship, was already preparing for a confrontation, unaware of the terrible power humanity had just unlocked. The battle for the galaxy had begun, and Earth's ancient dreadnought fleet was ready to take its place in the fight. The lights on Rook's console flickered for a moment, and a warning signal blared through the command center. He looked up to see Elena's face tense with concern. "Commander," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and dread. "We're not alone." The moment of anticipation was shattered. The Imperial fleet had arrived. The battle had only just begun, but the Empire was already feeling the sting of its own underestimation. The vast armada that had been dispatched to Earth, led by the relentless General Crate, was prepared for a quick and decisive victory. To them, Earth was an insignificant planet with primitive technology, just another world to be conquered, its population subdued and erased. They could not have been more wrong. Crate's fleet was massive, with battle cruisers that stretched across the void of space, A-driven ships designed for efficiency, and elite soldiers who had seen countless victories across the galaxy. This was supposed to be a simple strike, a forceful reminder to Earth that it had no place in the galaxy's power hierarchy. But what Crate had not anticipated was the human spirit. As Earth's fleet rose from the depths of its hidden bunkers, the first wave of Imperial ships came into view. They were enormous, built with sleek precision, designed to overwhelm any planet that dared to resist. But as they drew closer to Earth, the commanders on board the Imperial ships began to notice something strange. Earth's ships weren't like anything they had encountered before. They were cloaked, barely visible to the naked eye, and yet they moved with a purpose that was both calculated and erratic. It wasn't the perfect order the Empire was used to seeing. No, Earth's ships didn't fight like machines. They fought like humans. Unpredictable, dangerous, fierce. General Crate tightened his grip on the command chair as the first salvo of missiles came from Earth's fleet. They had struck first, launching their attack with precision. The missiles, guided by advanced AI, streaked through space, hitting their targets with pinpoint accuracy. One Imperial battlecruiser was torn apart in an instant, its hull breaching and its power core detonating in a massive burst of light. Crate's fleet was not prepared for this level of resistance. "This is impossible," Crate muttered under his breath as he watched his fleet's formation falter. How could they be so organized? But before he could issue new orders, Earth's ships had already vanished from view, cloaked once again. They had struck fast and then disappeared, leaving the Empire's forces scrambling. Crate's ships had sophisticated sensors, but they couldn't detect the cloaked ships in time. It was a strategy that Earth had perfected during the long years of isolation, one that was now paying off in ways the Empire could never have predicted. "Deploy the AI ships," Crate ordered sharply, his voice tense. "We need to flush them out." But the AI-driven ships, while formidable, were no match for the unpredictable tactics of human commanders. The Empire's ships fired blindly into space, hoping to hit something, anything. But the Earth fleet, with its superior cloaking technology and expertly trained crew, was always one step ahead. It was a cat-and-mouse game in the vast expanse of space, and Earth was winning. A massive explosion lit up the void of space as a second Imperial cruiser was hit from behind. The Dreadnought that had fired the shot uncloaked just long enough to unleash its devastating weapon, obliterating the enemy ship in a single point-blank shot. The explosion was so fierce that it sent shockwaves through the surrounding Imperial forces, disorienting them and throwing their ships into chaos. On Earth's command ship, Commander Rook stood with his arms crossed, watching the battle unfold. Elena, standing beside him, watched the redouts with focused intensity. The battle was far from over, but Earth's fleet was proving itself to be a formidable force. The tactics they had developed, born of necessity and survival, were working. For every Imperial ship that fired upon them, there was always one of Earth's ships that struck from an unexpected angle, hitting their enemies with precision and force. Rook's mind raced, weighing his options. He knew that Earth's fleet was still vastly outnumbered. Despite the technological advantages, they were fighting an empire that had crushed civilizations across the galaxy. It wouldn't be long before Crate realized that brute force wasn't enough to win this battle. And then, as if on cue, the ground beneath them shook. A ripple of energy surged through space, and Rook's eyes flicked to the holo display. A wave of Imperial soldiers had been deployed to Earth's orbit, descending in massive dropships, preparing for a ground assault. "Prepare for orbital bombardment," Rook ordered. "We can't let them land." The Dreadnoughts responded almost immediately. They began their deadly dance, cloaking and uncloaking in rapid succession, as they fired upon the Imperial ships from orbit. The blasts were precise and deadly, hitting enemy command ships with overwhelming power. It was a show of force that lit up the expanse of space, explosions rippling through the void. The visual chaos of the battle was breathtaking. Massive bursts of energy collided with Imperial ships, tearing them apart in spectacular fashion. The sight of Earth's ships cloaking, reappearing in the middle of the battlefield, and firing deadly beams of energy left Imperial forces stunned. Each shot seemed to say the same thing. Earth was not going down without a fight. The Imperial fleet retaliated, launching wave after wave of attacks. The soundless explosions lit up the starry backdrop as Earth's ships danced through space, dodging, firing, and reappearing in places the Empire's sensors couldn't track. Earth was using its technological advantage to perfection, but Crate knew it was only a matter of time before sheer numbers would win out. Yet, Earth's fleet had something else that the Empire didn't: human tenacity. The warriors behind the controls of these ancient dreadnoughts fought with a will to survive that no eye or elite soldier could replicate. For the first time, the Empire realized that this battle wasn't just about technology. It was about the human spirit. As Rook stood on the command deck, watching the battle unfold before him, he felt a sense of both pride and dread. Humanity was showing the galaxy that it was not to be underestimated, that it had the strength to fight back. But even as Earth's ships landed blow after blow, Rook knew that the battle was far from won. The Empire's counterattack was relentless. If they couldn't crush Earth with their sheer firepower, they would do so with overwhelming numbers. The coming days would test humanity's resolve in ways they couldn't yet imagine. But one thing was clear: this was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a fight for Earth's place in the galaxy, and they would not go down without a fight. The battle had escalated into a nightmare. What had begun as a daring display of Earth's technological prowess had quickly turned into a desperate struggle for survival. Earth's fleet, though superior in certain aspects, was now suffering heavy casualties. The Empire's relentless onslaught, bolstered by their vast eye-controlled warships, was too much to withstand. Each blow dealt by the Empire seemed to chip away at humanity's hope, and Earth's dreadnoughts were losing ground. Commander Rook paced back and forth on the bridge of his command ship, his mind racing. The enemy had begun to overpower them, their AI warships closing in with uncanny precision. The last remnants of Earth's fleet were now holding their ground, but for how much longer? The looming specter of extinction hung over them, all like a dark cloud. The Empire was not just a force, it was a wave of overwhelming destruction that seemed impossible to stop. The air was thick with tension as reports of falling ships came in. Dreadnoughts were being torn apart by the Empire's firepower, and the death toll was rising. Rook's chest tightened as he received the latest update. Bonner, a trusted officer, one of his closest friends, had died in the line of duty, sacrificing himself to protect the last operational dreadnought. It had been a suicide mission. He had rammed his ship into an Imperial AI vessel to take it down. But it hadn't been enough. Bonner's death was a painful blow to Rook, and the grief was palpable throughout the fleet. The crew on the bridge stood silent, their faces grim. Rook could feel the weight of their sorrow, and in that moment, he understood that this battle wasn't just about technology or tactics. It was about the people fighting for their survival. It was about the families, the loved ones, the future of humanity. And they were all teetering on the edge of annihilation. Bonner's sacrifice will not be in vain, Rook muttered to himself, his voice cold but resolute. He clenched his fists, his resolve hardening. He knew what had to be done. The remaining dreadnoughts were all they had left. If they couldn't break the Empire now, they would all be lost. Elena Reyes, his second-in-command, stood by his side, her eyes fixed on the battlefield unfolding outside. She could see it too. The enemy forces were closing in, their ships moving with brutal efficiency, firing relentless barrages at Earth's remaining fleet. Their eye-controlled warships were designed to adapt to any strategy, to predict their movements and counterattack with terrifying speed. Earth's unpredictable tactics, which had worked so well in the beginning, were no longer enough to throw the Empire off balance. "We need to do something drastic," Elena said, her voice barely audible. "If we don't act now, we'll lose everything." Rook nodded slowly. He had been thinking the same thing. Earth's fleet was on the brink of collapse. The dreadnoughts, once symbols of humanity's strength, were now all that stood between them and extinction. He had no illusions about the odds. He had watched as countless brave soldiers fell in combat, their sacrifices lighting up the cold expanse of space. Humanity was hanging by a thread, but that thread still held. "We fight," Rook declared, his voice cutting through the tension like a sharp blade. "We fight because we have no other choice. Humanity will not go quietly into the void. We will give everything we have to survive." The crew, hearing their commander's words, rallied. The bridge hummed with activity as orders were given, systems powered up, and the remaining dreadnoughts began to power their engines. Rook looked at Elena one last time, his eyes full of determination. The decision had been made. Earth's fleet would make a final, all-or-nothing assault. They would push back the Empire or die trying. The engines of the last operational dreadnought roared to life, its massive form rising from its hidden base on Earth's surface. The ship's cloaking devices flickered, hiding its presence for the moment. But the intensity of the battle outside the atmosphere was not lost on the crew. They could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on them. "Let's make this count," Rook said, his voice a low growl. The final assault was about to begin. The countdown began. Rook and his crew knew they were heading into the heart of the Empire's flagship, the very core of their enemy's power. The plan was simple but desperate. The last dreadnought would break through the Empire's defenses and deliver a final devastating blow. It was a suicide mission, but it was the only chance they had left. As the dreadnought's engines powered up for its suicidal plunge into the enemy flagship, the crew braced for impact. The visual of Earth's final weapon, cloaked and charging, was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. The ship's energy beams charged, its weapon systems preparing to unleash all the firepower they had left in one final desperate strike. But as the dreadnought entered Imperial space, Earth's soldiers were not just fighting with their ships. They were fighting on the ground as well. The Empire had begun to send waves of elite soldiers to board Earth's ships, intent on taking them down from within. What followed was brutal close-quarters combat. The hum of energy weapons, the clash of metal, and the deafening sound of explosions filled the corridors as soldiers fought for their lives. Rook's heart raced as he watched the battle unfold on the command deck. He could hear the screams and the roar of weapons in the distance, but he had no time to dwell on it. Every second was a matter of life and death. He looked out at the dark expanse of space, the looming shadow of the Empire's flagship growing larger with each passing moment. "Fire everything," Rook commanded. A deafening roar echoed through the ship as the dreadnought unleashed its full firepower, sending wave after wave of destructive energy toward the heart of the Empire's flagship. The space around them exploded in brilliant flashes of light. The final assault had begun. The crew knew they were outnumbered, outgunned, and outclassed in terms of technology. But they also knew something the Empire didn't. They knew that humanity would never back down, and as the dreadnought's engines flared, sending it hurtling toward the Empire's heart, they knew they had given it everything they had. Whether they lived or died, they had fought like no others had before. And in that moment, as the last dreadnought fired its final desperate shot, humanity's last stand had begun. The final battle had arrived, and it was a moment of pure desperation, yet determination. The once impenetrable forces of the Galactic Empire were now on the defensive. For Commander Rook and his fleet, it was the last chance to save humanity from complete annihilation. Their fleet was small compared to the vast armada of the Empire, but they had one thing the Empire could never predict: their humanity. Rook stood at the helm of his ship, staring out at the Empire's flagship in the distance. The Empire had always seen themselves as the pinnacle of technology and power. Their AI-driven warships, their massive battle cruisers, and their superior weapons seemed like an unstoppable force. But now, the tables had turned. The Empire had underestimated humanity's resilience, and their arrogance was their downfall. The final push to take down the Empire's flagship was nothing short of reckless, but it was the only plan that had any chance of success. The dreadnoughts were out of the question. Most had been severely damaged in the ongoing battle, But Earth's forces still had one last card to play: their cloaking technology. Using the last of their resources, they prepared for a daring assault. The fleet was to infiltrate the heart of the Empire's command center, deep inside their flagship. If they could break through the defenses, they might just have a chance to destroy the Empire's control core and bring down their seemingly unstoppable war machine. As Rook surveyed the battlefield from his command chair, the bridge of his ship hummed with anticipation. The cloaking devices powered up, and the once proud Imperial forces seemed unaware of the looming threat. The fleet moved in, silent and unseen, each ship cloaked and positioned perfectly for the surprise attack. The tension was unbearable. This was it. There would be no second chances. With the last remnants of Earth's fleet hidden from sight, they surged forward, launching their attack in one swift, calculated move. The Empire's defenses were formidable, but the crew of Earth's fleet had the element of surprise on their side. The first wave of missiles streaked through the void of space, their trails of bright light cutting through the darkness. They hit the Empire's outer defenses with devastating precision, breaking through shields and striking deep into the flagship's hull. Earth's fleet followed up with a devastating barrage of energy cannon fire, their weapons designed to exploit weaknesses in the Empire's ships that even their AI couldn't anticipate. Inside the Empire's flagship, chaos erupted. The crew of the Empire, who had long considered themselves invincible, were caught off guard by the sudden, fierce onslaught. The flagship's AI, which had long been in control of the ship's operations, tried to compensate, but it was too late. The surprise attack from Earth's fleet had already breached the flagship's outer hull, and now the fleet was inside. Rook and his team led the charge. Their cloaked ships made their way through the Empire's defenses, hitting closer and closer to the heart of the flagship. The Empire's soldiers, once confident in their overwhelming power, were now scrambling to counter the unexpected threat. But no matter how hard they fought, Earth's crew was relentless. Commander Rook knew this was a one-way mission. There was no turning back. But as he moved through the corridors of the Empire's flagship, he could feel the weight of every decision they had made. The crew of his ship, once ordinary humans like the rest of humanity, were now heroes in the making. They had all become something more. This battle was no longer about just saving Earth. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity would not bow to anyone. Rook and his team reached the heart of the Empire's flagship. The central control core of the Empire's fleet was heavily guarded, but Rook and his crew fought through wave after wave of enemy soldiers. They fought with everything they had, driven by the memory of all the fallen, including Bonner, whose sacrifice had been their turning point. The battle was fierce, but the crew of Earth's fleet was fueled by something the Empire's AI could never replicate: human spirit. Finally, they reached the control core. The doors to the core room opened, and Rook and his team moved in. The central control core of the Empire was a vast, glowing structure, surrounded by an army of automated defenses. But Rook and his team were ready. With no hesitation, they launched their final assault. The walls of the control room trembled as explosions rocked the room. The Empire's AI tried to defend itself, but it was no match for the fury of humanity. In one final, desperate push, Rook fired the last of their weaponry into the heart of the core. The central control structure erupted in a blinding flash of light, sending shockwaves throughout the flagship. The AI's control over the Empire's fleet was shattered in an instant. Outside, the Empire's flagship began to crumble. It was as if the heart of the ship had been ripped out, leaving it vulnerable and exposed. The once imposing battleship was now a sinking wreck, its defenses failing one by one. The sky above exploded with a brilliant burst of light as the flagship's destruction unfolded. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. The massive explosion lit up the heavens, casting a glow that could be seen from Earth itself. Earth's fleet watched in awe as the flagship, the symbol of the Empire's might, was reduced to nothing. The battle was over. Humanity had won. But the victory was bittersweet. Many lives had been lost, and the cost had been high. The crew of Earth's fleet had sacrificed so much to bring down the Empire's reign of terror. They had put everything on the line, fought through unimaginable odds, and ultimately triumphed. The fight for humanity's survival had come at a great price, but they had proven one undeniable truth to the galaxy: humanity would never be defeated. As the last remnants of the Empire's flagship fell into the abyss of space, Commander Rook stood at the bridge of his ship, looking out at the vast expanse before him. The battle was over, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy had only just begun. The tide had turned, and Earth had emerged victorious, against all odds. But as Rook stared into the stars, he knew one thing was certain: this was just the beginning. The galaxy had seen the power of humanity, and it would never forget. The stars were silent as the Empire's once invincible fleet retreated into the vast reaches of space. The battlefield, which had been a chaotic storm of fire and destruction just hours before, was now eerily calm. Earth's dreadnoughts, towering symbols of humanity's resilience and newfound strength, floated amidst the wreckage of the Empire's armada. Their crews were battered, bloodied, but undeniably victorious. The battle had been hard-fought, and the cost had been immense. Yet, against all odds, humanity had stood tall. Commander Rook stood at the helm of his flagship, watching as the remnants of the Empire's forces vanished into the dark void of space. His heart was heavy with the loss of so many good men and women. Bonner, the officer who had given his life to protect the last dreadnought, had been a brother to him. Rook had promised that he would lead the fight to the end, and now that the Empire was retreating, he felt the weight of that promise. But despite the victory, the war was not over. The Empire had been humiliated, but they were not yet defeated. Their retreat was only temporary. The galaxy was vast, and the Empire would rebuild, regroup, and perhaps return with even greater force. However, what had been made clear was that Earth was no longer a helpless planet to be ignored. Humanity had proven itself capable of standing against the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Commander Rook reflected on the moment as the stars stretched beyond the viewports. He thought of all the lives that had been lost in this conflict. His comrades, his crew, those who had fought and died to secure this moment of victory. Earth had paid a heavy price, but the message was clear: humanity could not, and would not, be crushed. As the dreadnoughts moved into formation, Commander Rook felt a surge of pride. They had done it. They had shown the galaxy that Earth, once thought to be weak and insignificant, had the power to fight back. The Empire had underestimated humanity, believing them to be nothing more than a primitive species, unworthy of notice. Now, the galaxy would see the truth. The war had taken much from Rook, but it had also given him something even greater: hope. The Earth he had known before the conflict was gone, its innocence shattered, its vulnerability exposed. But from the ashes of that broken world, a new era had begun. Humanity had forged its place in the stars, and the galaxy would never forget the lesson it had learned today. Rook found himself standing before the ruins of Bonner's ship, the vessel that had carried so many of his comrades into battle. It was now nothing more than a burnt husk, its once proud form twisted and broken. The loss hit Rook harder than anything else. Bonner had been more than just a colleague. He had been a friend, a brother in arms. The sacrifice had been unimaginable, but it was one of many that had allowed humanity to stand victorious in this war. Rook placed a hand on the scorched hull of Bonner's ship, his gaze lingering on the wreckage. The faces of those who had fallen flashed through his mind, their sacrifices etched into his memory. He whispered a vow to them, a promise that their deaths would not be in vain. Humanity had won, but they had done so with the blood of countless heroes staining the stars. "We will remember you," Rook whispered, his voice filled with emotion. "Your sacrifice will never be forgotten." The fleet, now battered and scarred, began to regroup. They had won the battle, but they knew the fight was far from over. The Empire had been driven back, but the galaxy was a dangerous place, and many challenges lay ahead. As Rook watched the ships of Earth's fleet hover in space, he knew that they would be ready for whatever came next. The war had taught them the true meaning of strength. It was not in their ships or their weapons, but in their unyielding will to survive. As the fleet readied itself for the next phase, Rook's eyes lifted to the view of Earth below. The planet, once a vulnerable speck in the galaxy, now stood as a symbol of hope, a beacon in the dark expanse of space. It was a reminder to the galaxy that no matter the odds, humanity would never back down. The camera slowly panned out from the fleet, showing Earth in the background. The once distant planet now looked like a shining jewel amidst the stars, its atmosphere glowing with the promise of a new future. The fleet's dreadnoughts, scared but powerful, stood in formation as they prepared for the challenges ahead. The battle may have been won, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy was far from over. The stars stretched out before them, a canvas on which humanity would now paint its future. And though the road ahead would be difficult, Commander Rook knew one thing for certain. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. The galaxy would never forget the power, determination, and resilience of the species that had fought to defend their home. As the fleet prepared for whatever came next, Commander Rook stood tall, his resolve as strong as ever. The Empire had been defeated, but the future was still uncertain. The galaxy had seen humanity's strength, and now they would face a new era, one where Earth, no longer weak and vulnerable, would stand proudly among the stars. And Rook knew that whatever came next, they would face it together as one. The final scene was a vision of hope. As Earth's fleet sailed toward the unknown, the stars stretched out before them. The battle was over, but the war had just begun, and humanity, with its newfound strength and unity, would be ready.